Good morning, Alaska. This is Pastor David Grisham with Last Frontier Evangelism Radio again, talking at you on Hot Talk, KOAN, 95.1 FM and 1080 AM. And today we're going to take Jesus to the streets and we're going to take liberals to the woodshed. And let's start off by taking one liberal to the woodshed by the name of Hillary Clinton. You know, the Wicked Witch of the West that's running for president. I've got an article here from a man by the name of Bob Unruh with WorldNet Daily News, and he is quoting from a man's book in which Hillary's abortion doctor, now I want to clarify that Hillary is not claimed to have had an abortion. This is her personal doctor, who is also the largest abortion doctor in the state of Arkansas, who's performed over 20,000 abortions, and he claims that she is a Christ figure. Those are his words. Says Hillary Clinton was viewed as a Christ figure by a leading abortionist and is so dedicated to abortion rights that pro-life advocates will wish for the days of Obama if she is elected. That's according to author Paul Kengor, whose books have included Takedown and 11 Principles of a Reagan Conservative. He told WorldNet Daily that Americans still believe and understand that the right to life is the first and most fundamental of all freedoms, without which no other rights and freedoms can exist. And yet Hillary Clinton completely disagrees with that. For her, her first principle and first priority is a woman's right to choose. She sees the right to abortion as a fundamental human right. Nothing is more politically and ideologically sacred to Hillary Clinton, he said. Significantly, Hillary Clinton sees her faith in Roe v. Wade as not at all in conflict with her lifelong Christian faith, and I put faith in parentheses here, but I did that myself, and neither did her OBGYN in Arkansas, who quite amazingly just happened to be the single largest abortion provider in the entire state of Arkansas. This man, Dr. William Harrison, proudly admitted to doing some 20,000 abortions, and he proudly counted Hillary Clinton as his patient and kindred soul. There is nothing more sacrosanct to Hillary Clinton than a woman's right to choose. It is her alpha and omega, beyond doubt her highest priority. I wrote an entire book, this is Kinger quoting here, I wrote an entire book on the faith of Hillary Clinton, and the one thing that struck me above all else from start to finish was her absolute fealty to Roe v. Wade. It is Hillary's hill to die on. I believe Hillary Clinton would give her life for Roe v. Wade. Folks, if you're voting for Hillary Clinton on this election, you are voting for the most pro-abortion presidential candidate that has probably ever stepped foot behind a podium. You are probably voting for Miss Abortion herself. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about her being this so-called Christ figure. Hillary Clinton is more like an anti-Christ figure because abortion is not compatible with Christianity. She may claim to be a Christian, but we'll get to that here in just a minute. Abortion, folks, and I'm gonna say something that has been extremely controversial in the past when I've said it, and I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to tell you why I said it. Abortion murders babies and rapes their mothers. Now, why in the world would I say something like that? Let me repeat that. Abortion, and I include Planned Parenthood on that, murders babies and rapes their mother. You see, years ago when I was in college and I was a criminal justice administration major, I learned right quick that rape is not a crime of sex. It is a crime of violence. It is a crime of violence against a woman's genitalia that basically is to demean her. It is to belittle her. It is to make her feel powerless and helpless. And it also emotionally scars her. Now, that is exactly what happens with rape, and that is exactly what happens with abortion. Abortion defiles womanhood more than rape. It is a sexual assault against a woman through her genitals, and it actually demeans her and belittles what it means to be a woman. One of the greatest thing that a woman can ever do on this planet, something a man could never do, is have a child. It is what makes women so distinctly different than men. They absolutely can give birth to children. They are a cradle of life. And to actually go into a woman's genitalia and destroy that life that's growing within her actually defiles womanhood more than rape itself, because it is an act of violence through there that destroys her spiritually and leads to emotional problems. What it means to be a woman is motherhood. Now, Donald Trump talked about, I want to talk about this for just a second. Trump talked about grabbing a woman's crotch, and I find that offensive. And quite frankly, it was done 10 or 11 years ago, and I understand locker room talk because I'm a guy. I know what locker room talk is all about, and I know this is how a lot of men speak. I don't speak that way because I'm a Christian. Donald Trump at the time was not a Christian, so I expect him to speak that way like most worldly men do. His remarks I will not defend. They are indefensible about grabbing a woman on the crotch. But here's something even worse. Planned Parenthood actually does grab a woman by the crotch. It's just not talking about it. They actually do grab a woman by the crotch, and they reach in and destroy what it means to be a woman. They destroy life inside a mother. They reach into there and kill that baby. Now, this month is the 100th anniversary of Planned Parenthood, and I want to read them a little anniversary card just for them. All right? Dear Planned Parenthood, happy 100th anniversary. I am so very proud of the work you have done for my cause. By the way, Adolf Hitler sends his warmest regards, emphasis on warmest. And we both hope to see all of you soon. All of you who perform, support, fund, and vote for abortions. We'd like to have you personally here to hug your necks. See you soon. Signed, your friend and mentor, Satan. Yes, folks, if you support abortion, you're on your way to hell. I just have to tell you that. If you support abortion, you're on your way to hell. You are not a real Christian. Hillary is not a real Christian. Now, I want to ask you something. I want you to imagine this scenario. Imagine that I claim to be an atheist, but I went to church every Sunday, and I read my Bible, and I actually obeyed the Scriptures, and I lived my life according to Scripture, and I professed faith in Jesus Christ. But I went around and telling everyone when they asked me, well, what do you believe in? Well, I don't believe there is God. But you practiced your entire life believing as if you did believe there was a God. That would be ridiculous. How in the world could I live as a Christian and claim to be an atheist? No one would take my claim seriously. Well, the same is true if you claim to be a Christian and you live your life like an atheist. If you live your life as if there is no God, why would anyone believe what comes out of your mouth when you tell them that there is a God and you believe in him? Well, that's what Hillary's doing when she claims to be a Methodist, when she claims to be a Christian, is that it just seems downright dumb that you would profess a faith that you don't even follow. The Bible says God hates the shedding of innocent blood, so why in the world would you support the shedding of innocent blood and still call yourself a Christian? Now, this seems to be rampant in our society today. I want to read you another short little article. It's about a Christian NFL quarterback who leaves a huge trip in his visit to his hometown bar. This is on The Blaze, from Glenn Beck's radio program or his website. And it says, Carson Wentz may be an NFL star, but he hasn't forgotten where he came from. The 23-year-old Philadelphia Eagles quarterback went back to his hometown of Fargo, North Dakota in the first week of October. While he was visiting, he and a group of friends ran up quite the tab at a local watering hole. In other words, a bar. Herds and horns. He just wanted to hang out, shoot some pool, and play some darts with his buddies, and just relax and have a good time. Jesse Vitiglano, who was with Wentz, told WTXF-TV in Philadelphia. Wentz reportedly not only paid the $1,000 bill he and others racked up, he also left an impressive tip for the waitstaff. $500 to be exact. The Philadelphia Inquirer reported last month that Carson is a Christian who has Proverbs 3, 5-6 tattoo on one of his biceps, and Isaiah 41:10 tattoo on his back. He also has an AO1, or audience of one, tat on his wrist, the newspaper reported. Folks, this is how the world sees Christianity. They see that you're just a nice guy who does nice things for people. But here's a guy who is 23 years old, claiming to be a Christian, going to get drunk in a bar with a bunch of his friends, and they run up a $1,000 bar tab, which is a lot of alcohol. That's a lot of alcohol. He spent a lot of money on alcohol. That's a lot of people getting rip-roaring drunk. Ephesians 5:18 says drunkenness is a sin. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9 and 10 says that no drunkard will inherit the kingdom of God. So is he really being a Christian? Is he really serving as a Christian example? Oh, but wait, he's got tattoos. Well, that must certainly mean he's a Christian. Well, glory be to glory. Let's just tattoo the whole New Testament on his chest and he'll just turn into Jesus. No, I don't think so. Getting a tattoo on yourself does not make you a Christian. Okay, going to church does not make you a Christian. Supporting abortion certainly doesn't make you a Christian, like Hillary Clinton. Claiming to be a Methodist doesn't make you a Methodist. Okay, Jesus said that there would be men who would come in dressed outwardly as sheep, but inwardly they'd be ravenous wolves. These are the kinds of people he's talking about. He's talking about people who inwardly they live like the devil, but outwardly they profess to be Christians. Look, if you go to bars and get drunk, you're living like the devil. If you go out and have an abortion, you're living like the devil. If you support abortion, if you vote for Hillary Clinton, you're living like the devil. Folks, I'm telling you, you can't be a Christian and a Democrat. Don't vote Democrat if you're Christian because they support abortion. So we'll come back right after the break. This is Pastor David Grisham with Last Frontier Evangelism. I hear the music playing and it's time to go, but we will be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back, Alaska. We're back from the break, and this is KOAN 95.1 FM and 1080 AM Hot Talk. Pastor Dave Grisham is your host for Last Frontier Evangelism, where we're taking Jesus to the streets and liberals to the woodshed. All right, glad to be back. We've got another article here I wanted to talk about. We're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about what's going on with some churches. And there's stuff going on at the churches that even a lot of people in the churches don't know about. So that's why I wanted to bring this up. I've got another article here. It's by Bob Unruh from the WorldNet Daily, and it says, another state tells churches to shut up about transgenders. For a second time in just weeks, a state finds itself on defense in a legal action triggered by its attempt to dictate what ministers and others say inside their churches. The newest case was filed against Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination Commissioners Jamie R. Williamson, Sunila T. George, and Charlotte G. Ritchie, and Attorney General Maura Healey. It's over a new gender identity definition adopted in Massachusetts. The measure makes gender identity a special class with more protections than ordinary citizens. Under the provision, the Attorney General has claimed houses of worship are places of public accommodation, and members therefore cannot even express ideas concerning religious expression regarding biological sex and gender identity. Under the law, places of public accommodation may not discriminate against or restrict a person from services because of that person's gender identity. For example, a hotel or motel may not refuse to book a room for a person because of the person's gender identity. The statement from the state continued, even a church could be seen as a place of public accommodation if it holds a secular event such as a spaghetti dinner that is open to the general public. The demands include having church officials and even members use whatever pronouns a person would demand, irrespective of their actual gender. And under Massachusetts law, refusing to use a transgender person's preferred pronoun would be punishable discrimination. Folks, You know what? You know what's caused this? This reminds me of my favorite quote by Martin Luther King when he said this. Now, I love his I Have a Dream speech. I really do love that one. But my favorite one goes like this. He says, "And it may come to pass that the greatest tragedy of our time will not be the words and the deeds of the children of darkness, but the silence and apathy of the children of light." Folks, that's the problem. The silence and apathy of the children of light. This action by the states, and there's another article here I won't get to, but it's talking about the same issue going on in Iowa. There is the same issue going on in Iowa. This is the second state now that has done this. And the reason this is going on is because of the inaction of the church. They cannot ignore the actions of the enemy that's going on. This is what happens when churches are too cowardly to stand up for righteousness in our culture. This is what happens when pastors are more concerned about butts in the pew and money in the plate than they are about biblical truth coming from behind the pulpit. This is what happens when there's no boldness coming from behind the pulpit. This is what happens when the church has ceased to become the moral conscience of America. That's what the church is supposed to be. It is supposed to be the moral conscience of America. The church has been too inwardly focused and hiding the light of Christ under the four walls of a bushel basket, the buildings that the church has fallen so much in love with. They're so concerned about losing their 501c3 or somebody getting offended that they're going to lose donations that they have neglected the weightier matters of Christ and have stopped preaching the truth with boldness to its people. And they have stopped encouraging people to go beyond the church and preach the gospel out in the culture. That's what's causing this problem. And churches have not been involved politically. They're too scared to be involved politically. They're afraid they'll lose their 501c3s. They're running around like scared little chickens. And I'm telling you, folks, right now, if you ignore the actions of the devil out in the culture, when he consolidates his power in the culture, he will kick down the doors of your sanctuaries and ruthlessly persecute you in your church. And that is what is starting to happen. Persecution is coming to the church because the church has not gone on the offensive. The best defense is a good offense. The church is the moral conscience of America. If that conscience is silent, then evil behavior will run amok unchecked, and that is exactly what is going on. I'll give you an example. Last year in 2015, our ministry stood in front of the Supreme Court of the United States when they were having oral arguments for gay marriage. Okay, so marriage is the first covenant of God given to man in the Garden of Eden. And are we safeguarding that? Are we tenaciously defending it? Well, not if you were out there those days with us in Washington, D.C. There were 15,000 plus gay marriage supporters who were out there supporting gay marriage. And guess how many Christians showed up on the Saturday prior to that for their traditional marriage rally and march? Less than 1,000. Less than 1,000 Christians saw fit to take time out of their precious day to do the will of God and go to Washington, D.C. and stand for righteousness. This is why gay marriage is the law of the land, because the ones who serve the God of law and order have remained silent. They have remained silent. You want to know who's at fault for this? Judgment comes to the house of God first. That's right. Judgment comes to the house of God first. I don't look at the sinners and blame the sinners first, because sinners do what sinners do. They sin. That's what they do. That's what I did before I was saved. That's what you did before you were saved. But the church has a higher moral responsibility than standing around worrying about the next bake sale for the youth group. There's nothing wrong with having bake sales for the youth group. There's nothing wrong with having prayer meetings. But when you neglect the great callings of God, the great commission that Christ gave you to reach out to the world, and I don't just mean by foreign missionaries. I know sending foreign missionaries is great out all across the world. It's great. But I'm telling you, if you don't start evangelizing your own backyard, you're going to lose your base of support, and your missionaries overseas, their benefits, their money coming into them, their support will dry up. And it will go dry, and we will be living in a wilderness, a desert of sin in this country that you will not recognize. Folks, we're going to lose our freedoms. We're going to lose our prosperity if we don't turn our faces back to God. And that's the responsibility first and foremost with the church. I'll be back. This is Pastor David Grisham. Be back right after this next break. Hang on. Welcome back, Alaska. We're back from the break, and this is 95.1 FM, 1080 AM, KOAN Hot Talk Radio. My name is Pastor David Grisham. I am the host of Last Frontier Evangelism. You can contact me at lastfrontierevangelism.com. We are here taking Jesus to the streets, and we're taking the liberals to the woodshed. Today, on this segment, I want to talk a little bit about the WikiLeaks stuff that's been coming out. There's been an awful lot of WikiLeaks documents being dumped right during this election, and one of them that was dumped had to do with the churches, believe it or not. Podesta, who is one of the top advisors on the Clinton campaign, there was some emails leaked about him that he had spoken to some of other staffers, and I've got an article here from LifeZet, blog post by Edmund Kozak. It's an article. It says, WikiLeaks, Podesta and left-wing activists plot Catholic Spring. You know, kind of like the Arab Spring. Longtime Clinton confidant discussed infiltrating the Catholic Church with progressive ideology to foment revolution. A newly leaked email shows Hillary Clinton's current campaign chairman, John Podesta, and a left-wing activist casually discussing fomenting revolution in the Catholic Church. And here's the quote, "There needs to be a Catholic Spring in which Catholics themselves demand the end of a Middle Ages dictatorship and the beginning of a little democracy and respect for gender equality in the Catholic Church." Sandy Newman, president and founder of the progressive nonprofit Voices for Progress, writes to Podesta in an email titled, "Opening for a Catholic Spring? Just musing." In response, Podesta assures Newman to rest easy, for he and his progressive pals have already created organizations explicitly designed to infiltrate the Catholic Church with progressive ideology. Though he cautions that the time may not be right for full revolution just yet. And he says, "We created Catholics in Alliance for the Common Good to organize for a moment like this, but I think it lacks the leadership to do so now. Likewise, Catholics United. Like most spring movements, I think this will have to be bottom-up," Podesta writes. There's a couple of organizations for you. Catholics in Alliance for the Common Good to those people are obviously not in favor of the Catholic Church. Likewise, Catholics United is not in favor of the Catholic Church, but they are infiltrating the Catholic Church to try to overturn it for a revolution. Now, why does this not surprise me? It doesn't surprise me because well, for one thing, the church has decided to open its doors just to everyone. Jesus said to beware of those who would come in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves. Well, the churches today are pretty much just letting wolves right in the door. You don't have to wear the sheep's clothing. Just come right on in. So you got these people that are willing to go into the church and just start wreaking havoc in the church, and they're just putting out ideology that conflicts with Christian teaching. Now, if you notice at the first part of the article, I talked about how they had said that it was time to get rid of a Middle Ages dictatorship. Is that how they see God? A Middle Ages dictatorship? And they want time for a little democracy. I've got news for you, folks. God's kingdom is a kingdom with a king. It is not a democracy. We don't get to vote on what we think is right or wrong. We don't get to decide what we think is right or wrong, and what is right or wrong doesn't change with the culture. It does not. That's part of the problem. You see, people don't believe in absolute truth. Well, if you're one of those people out there that does not believe in absolute truth, let me ask you a question. Is rape always wrong? Now, if you say rape is always wrong, no matter what, now I know some people will say, well, in some cultures they believe, blah, blah, and I don't care what some cultures believe. I'm asking you a question. Is rape, by its very nature, always morally wrong in spite of what other people's opinions are? I would say yes, it's always wrong. I believe it to be an absolute truth that it's always wrong. If it is always wrong, then you cannot argue there's no such thing as absolute truth. If you believe that rape is always wrong, then you must argue that there is an absolute truth. And if there is an absolute truth, a morality that ascends beyond the scope of man, then you must believe in God. And there is a God who wrote that absolute truth. That's the problem, is these people don't believe in God. They want to infiltrate the church because they see religion simply as a means of persuading people or actually in influencing people and doing their will. That's how they see the church. They don't see the church as a redeeming thing for mankind, that people can go there, they get changed, that God comes into their heart and they change their lives and they're no longer doing the things. They don't understand that a lot of the lawlessness that's going on around right now would be changed if people would come to the God of law and order. If they had the God of law and order in their hearts, we wouldn't have riots in Ferguson. We wouldn't have riots in Baltimore. We wouldn't have people running into gay nightclubs and shooting up people with automatic weapons. We wouldn't have that sort of thing because God, the real God, is a God of law and order. But they don't see the church as a place for people to go get to connect with the real God. They see the church as a place of political influence. For them, their God is their politics. With Hillary Clinton, the only God she serves is the Democrat Party. She serves the God of liberal progressivism. That's what she serves. That is her philosophy. And she's just disguising herself. She puts on the sheep's clothing of being a Methodist, but inwardly she's the ravenous wolf of someone who does not believe in God. That's why she supports abortion. That's why she supports gay marriage. That's why this young man that I read about in the last segment, or about a Christian NFL quarterback who leaves a huge tip in a visit to a hometown bar, that's how the world defines Christianity. They want to redefine what our faith is, when our faith is supposed to be defined by the Word of God, not by the word of the culture, not by the word of some quarterback who wants to go to a bar and get drunk with his friends, not by the word of some woman who wants to claim to be a Methodist, and yet she wants to kill little babies through abortion. She has no problem with that. She celebrates it. And our faith is determined, our faith in Christ is determined by the Word of God. And the evidence of our faith is in how we live. It's in how we live. You have to look. Jesus said you'll know a tree by its fruit. You need to start looking at the fruit of people. If you want to know who to vote for this fall, you want to know who to vote for in a few weeks, I'd suggest you start looking at the fruit of these people. There's no body count associated with Donald Trump. Oh, people are talking about how he talked dirty to some woman or did something like that, like a lot of men do when they're not saved, and he did this years ago. But what has Hillary done? Hillary has a body count. There's not a body count associated with Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton abandoned the men in Benghazi. She had the means of sending them support. Aircraft were 20 minutes away in Italy. She did not send them. She did not send them. She left those men to die. She did not care about them. And you want to talk about some guy who supposedly grabbed somebody on the crotch and said something nasty to her? I'm sorry. Life and death hangs in the balance of the office of the presidency. And if you're going to have somebody in there who doesn't care about life or death. She doesn't care about the lives of little babies because they're just throwaways. You can just they're disposable. You can just dispose of them like so much trash. And if the lives of people that are born are just disposable, like those men in Benghazi, do you really want this kind of person as president of the United States? These are the kinds of people that are infiltrating the church, and they're trying to change the church. What needs to happen, folks, is the church needs to be changing them. We don't need infiltrators coming into the church. We need church as infiltrators in the culture to change the culture, and then we can turn this thing around. Folks, my name is Pastor David Grisham with Last Frontier Evangelism. You can contact me at lastfrontierevangelism.com, at gmail.com, and I'll be back right after the break. Good morning, Alaska. This is Pastor David Grisham back with Last Frontier Evangelism on KOAN Talk Radio, Hot Talk Radio at 95.1 FM and 1080 AM, and we are here taking Jesus to the streets and taking liberals to the woodshed. Again, you can contact our ministry at lastfrontierevangelism at gmail.com if you want to contact us. So let's talk on this last segment about immigration. Now, I just want to say one thing right off the bat. I want to make Alaska great again. I want to make Alaska great again. We got to get our immigration in Alaska under control. I think what we need to do is build a wall between Alaska and Canada and make those stinking Canadians pay for it. That's what we ought to do, is make them pay for that wall. And and they're kind of sneaky. They look like us. You have to kind of ask them, are you from Alaska? Oh, dude, I'm from Alaska, eh? Oh, no, you're not. I caught that little A at the end of your sentence there. You're a Canadian. Get back across that border. No, all kidding aside, folks, all kidding aside, immigration is a very important issue. And why is it so important? Well, you see, one of the things I learned in college is that all laws require jurisdiction. Jurisdiction. Laws have borders. The United States Constitution has a border. It has a border of the United States. The international border between Canada and Mexico, between Alaska and Canada, is where that Constitution begins and ends. If you erase those borders, like some on the left want to do, then you have essentially erased our Constitution because you have erased the jurisdiction of that Constitution. That's why those borders matter so much. Now, Obama has not cared one iota about illegals coming across our southern border, and he has not cared one iota about unvetted Muslims coming from the Middle East into the United States, and he hasn't cared about Muslim refugees invading Europe, spreading murder, terrorism, and rape. He hasn't cared about any of those things. And coming from Texas, folks, I am originally from Texas, moved here in May of this year to Alaska. I love Alaska, love Texas too. But Texas has a big problem. Texas has a big problem with these unregulated immigrants coming in. As a matter of fact, it's so bad in Amarillo, Texas right now that there is a neighborhood of Somali refugees living in Amarillo who went to the mayor of Amarillo, Texas, and told them that they had elected their own mayor in their neighborhood. And the mayor looked at him and said, no, you did not. You do not have a mayor. You do not have your own city. You don't get to claim your own territory in the middle of Amarillo, Texas. A lot of these people that are coming in do not respect our laws. They don't like our laws. They don't want our laws. They want Sharia law, or they want something else. Well, to do that, to allow that to happen, is to allow people who are hostile to our Constitution in the United States. Why would you do that? When you make them stand up and swear an oath, when they get their citizenship, they swear to defend the Constitution, not Sharia law, against all enemies, both foreign and domestic, right? But Obama hasn't cared about that. But there is one immigration issue that has him very angry. One. And it proves what a hypocrite Obama is. He hasn't cared about the immigration into Europe, illegal immigration. He hasn't cared about illegal immigration into the United States. Where does he care about immigration? Well, I have an article here, and it is from the Front Page Mag, and it's titled "The Little Jewish Village That Makes Obama Boil: Between Heaven, Earth, and the White House." It's written by Daniel Greenfield. Daniel Greenfield says, halfway to the sky sits a tiny village of little white houses that has attracted the ire of the White House. The village of Amona, with its small white houses and red roofs, could easily be mistaken for some lost Italian village or a dusty California town. But the White House would not have boiled in anger, as one anonymous official claimed, over the doings of some Italian village. There's only one place on earth that makes Obama's blood boil. It isn't Iran or North Korea. It's Israel. Israel. He cares about Jewish peoples making settlements in the West Bank. This angers him. Oh, we don't care. He doesn't care about illegals coming across the southern border of the United States, even though many of them are criminals. Many of them are drug addicts or drug dealers or maybe even terrorists. This does not concern him. No. He's got a lax policy. He wants to just catch them and let those people go. But this little town in Israel has got him fuming mad. What hypocrisy. Folks, the entire nation of Israel is a nation of refugees. A nation of refugees. If you go back in history, and I'm not going to go back very far because we don't have time on this radio program, but if you go back in history to right about the time of the Bolshevik Revolution in the former Soviet Union, you're going to find they had these things called pogroms, and these pogroms were basically persecutions of Jews. They drove them off their farmlands and ranches. They starved them, and they drove them off their property and took their property away from them. And many of them fled to Israel as the only safe place for them to go. Some of them fled to Europe, and then a few years later, the Nazis came up with death camps and tried to kill them, and some of them fled on to Israel then. Some of them that stayed, they didn't get to flee. They died. Many of them after World War II, after this persecution, they did flee to Israel. Many of them are fleeing the Middle East today because of ISIS and other radical Muslim groups that are destroying their villages and killing their families and driving them out of the Middle East, and they only see two safe places to go: the United States and Israel. Israel is a nation of refugees. Mr. Obama, what about those refugees? What about them? Do you not care about those refugees? Is it only the Muslim refugees from Syria? You don't care about the Jews that are fleeing those areas and going to Israel, and Israel is expanding and they need to have some more settlements inside the West Bank? Oh no, that's Palestinian territory. Well, I'm sorry, but did you know there's never been a nation of Palestine? Palestine has never existed. It does not exist to this day, nor has it ever existed. It existed as a region of the Ottoman Empire, and that's all it has ever been. When people tell me, oh, I'm a Palestinian, I say, no, you're not. You're an Arab. There's no such thing as a Palestinian. Palestine does not, has not, and I hope not, will not ever exist. That's the source of the problems in the Middle East, is people are not letting the Jews alone. That's the key to peace in the Middle East. If Islam would leave the Jews alone, everything would be fine. Also, there's another thing going on in the Middle East I want to talk about for just a moment. In Syria, it's a civil war going on, and we've got our nose in the big middle of that where it does not belong. Well, some years ago, the liberal progressive Democrats put out an ad on television that featured two generals from two different countries going at it fisticuffs inside of a boxing ring. And they said basically in that commercial that, you know, if the people who sent the soldiers out to fight had to do the fighting themselves, maybe we'd have less wars. Well, let's borrow that idea from them for a moment and take it up a notch. Let's have Barack Obama and Vladimir Putin get into a ring and have a death match. And if we're going to go to war with Russia, which a lot of people are really afraid of right now, if we're going to go to war with Russia, let's let Vladimir Putin and Barack Obama fight it out in a death match in a ring. Winner take all. Whoever's left standing and left alive, that's the one who wins the war. Now, I'm not a betting man because I'm a Christian, but if I were a betting man, I would not bet on Barack Obama. I mean, Vladimir Putin rides horses, he does judo, he hunts, he fishes, he's a man's man. But Barack Obama, I'm afraid to say, is a salad-eating sister boy. I have seen him riding a girl's bike while wearing a helmet. I don't think he would stand a chance against Vladimir Putin. But I would say that if we're going to go to World War III, instead of having millions of lives or thousands of lives lost over a battle that we shouldn't be involved in because we got no business being in it, let's just let the two top dogs duke it out, and whoever's left alive wins. What do you think, America? This is Pastor Dave Grisham. Until next week, and I'm on Last Frontier Evangelism Radio and lastfrontierevangelism@gmail.com. You can contact me there. If you have comments or questions, I might read them on the air. Until next week, folks, signing off is Pastor Dave Grisham.